Welcome to Talk of the Town. I'm Phil Arno.
And I'm Kim Piazza. And did you know that autism affects 1 in 68 children and 1 in 42 boys, and it is currently the fastest growing developmental disorder in the United States. And
we're going to talk about autism today, and I have to admit that although I'm familiar with the term, I'm not an expert. So I'm going to play the role of dummy. I'm sure you're happy about that.
Oh,
and I'm
stop.
going to ask the questions that the people out there are thinking.
So people who maybe don't have a
and I
connection.
need an explanation. I need some clarification on what autism is.
Well, I can tell you that I have 13 years of firsthand experience. My son AJ, who is 13 years old, does have autism, and he is a joy and precious, and is just the love of my life, and has brought so much to my family.
He's a character too, I know.
He is.
He's been here.
He is a character. And so, you know, I think that certainly Phil and I have a very different perspective, and we are lucky enough to have two folks here in the studio with us who have such a broad base of knowledge. I'd like to welcome Dr. Kristen McDonald and Dr. Marcus Tamir. And you two are from the Institute of Autism Research. And I'm going to go ahead and let you tell us your titles at the Institute.
Yes, the Institute for Autism Research at Canisius College, and I'm the co-director with Dr. Chris Lapata and Kristen,
Yes,
or Dr. McDonald.
And I'm a research faculty at the IAR. I've been working with both Dr. Tamir and Dr. Lapata for many years, so I came back for more.
And you know, my son actually attended the Institute. He did a number of, we called them rounds, I don't know if you still call them rounds, but he did a number of the things that the Institute has to offer, and I've got to tell you, we can't say enough good things about what these folks have done for the little man in my life, and I can't say enough for what this institution is doing for kids here locally, and for the research that they're garnering, really, that's going to help people around the world. But we probably want to start off with...
Well, my first question. Autism seems to me to be a general term that there's a lot of different behavioral problems are kind of bunched under. Is it a generic term that encompasses...
Phil's looking for a definition, and that's tough.
The definition is, autism is a spectrum disorder, so now they call it, they just came out with the latest criteria from the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is the way we diagnose disorders. And autism spectrum disorder consists of 2 core deficits. So it's restrictive repetitive patterns of behavior and interest, that's one of them. And then the other one is deficits in social communication and social interaction. So what you would see is these are kids that have difficulty with the back and forth of social interaction, social communication. They have difficulty reading nonverbal cues. Like now you guys are looking at me, right? If I said something, oh, there's a monkey on the wall, you'd be like, what are you doing? You would give me information that would tell me, oh, wait, I said something that doesn't make sense. So they have deficits in reading nonverbal cues. They have deficits in social communication, social interaction. They have a tendency to tell you everything, if they're verbal, they have a tendency to tell you everything you didn't want to know about something. So for kids that we work with, it could be Minecraft, Pokemon, but it could be the War of 1812. You know, I mean, it can vary, but they know a lot of great detail. Those would be the verbal kids. But for the kids that aren't verbal, you would still see the same difficulty reading the nonverbal cues. You would still see the lack of interaction, you know, the seeking, like whether I do this to you or not, I wouldn't do that because that'd freak you out. But when I come into a situation, I'm going to look at people and at least have, okay, there's some people there. Individuals with autism, whether you're talking about individuals with limited cognitive skills and language skills, as well as kids with high functioning skills, are going to have difficulty making that connection with other people. So with regards to the restrictive repetitive patterns of behavior and interest, that the difficulty there is schedules, routines. If something, their world has to go a certain way, and if something changes, right? So suddenly if they're in school and the speech teacher's not going to be there, that can throw them off. If you go a certain way home and there's an accident, so you go a different way, these kids or these individuals can be thrown off because the schedule's not the same. They might have like I said, these narrowly defined areas of interest, or it could be these narrow defined areas of focus. So they focus on, instead of a car to play with, they might turn the car over and just flick the wheels over and over.
Now, some of the things that you're describing might be ordinary behavior in some children. I think what differentiates that is maybe an extreme.
It's not functional. These are behaviors that in a typical child, and I don't even think I'd say ordinary, but in a typical child, that if a typical child had these behaviors, they could still function successfully in a general way in school or in their community. But these behaviors actually can disrupt and end the functionality of an individual who has.
Right, so you might know somebody that can tell you a lot about the Buffalo Bills. That doesn't mean they have autism, right? It's the individuals that are high functioning, have high cognitive skills and language skills. You can have a conversation, but then you realize they tell you more about great detail about things beyond what you would want to have interest for. You and I like going back to the Bills. So you and I might like the Bills. I'm going to talk a little bit about them, but then it's done. Hey, but something else is going on. Let's talk about that. Or if I'm talking about the Bills, but I see, oh wait, you're smiling. What happened? I realize it's not about me, that you have to have a back and forth to have interaction. Individuals with autism fail to have that back and forth, right, of that interaction, the awareness of the other. Sometimes they talk about mind blindness, the ability to take the perspective of another person. So if you and I are classmates and you get a C and I get an A and we're walking out of the class, if I'm your friend, I'm going to see, oh, you got a C. Oh, yeah, that was a tough test, right? You might ask me how I did, but because we're friends, I'm realizing, oh, you're not going to want to know about my A. Oh, it was a tough test is how I would talk to you. I'm going to do anything in my power to not have to tell you that I did well, right? So it's really, something becomes a disorder when it affects your functioning. In home, school, not just a problem here or there. I'm talking consistent problems across the different environments that you would be in.
Now, the prevalence of autism seems to be on the rise. Is that because there's more people being diagnosed because of better methods, or is it because the incidence of autism is actually rising?
And I want to hear Dr. McDonald's opinion on that one.
No problem. Well, I think we're still trying to figure out in the literature why that number is increasing. And I think more children are being diagnosed, especially those who are higher functioning, so they have better cognitive or language abilities. So those children may not have been diagnosed years ago, but now we're seeing that they're still exhibiting spectrum characteristics as well. There may be some sort of interaction with the environment or genetics, but research-wise, we haven't really proven that to be true. So we're still looking at different factors that may explain that. Also, when a child does have a diagnosis, now there are more services available to them, so that may also be increasing the number of people who are seeking a diagnosis for their child now that there are services available.
Well, for example, a generation ago, one in how many children would have been called autistic, and as opposed to today?
Well, just several years ago, it was 1 in 110,
Exactly.
and now it's 1 in
68.
1 in 68, 1 in 42 boys. The incidence has definitely gone up. If everybody were to look back in their class, when they were children, they might have known somebody that was a little bit quirky, right? Different, or maybe had a lot of knowledge about certain things, but just didn't really relate. I'm not saying that they have autism, but a lot of those individuals weren't identified. The increase, as Dr. McDonald was saying, the recent increase, because they're identifying better those individuals with higher functioning skills, and they're identifying those individuals as being on the spectrum that in the past were just seen as a little bit quirky or odd.
We're better at diagnosing.
Yes, and pediatricians, family physicians, they're getting a lot more information about giving parents information. So if you have a kid and you go to your doctor and say, my kid's not doing this or this, most doctors are going to say, don't worry, every kid's different, right? Every kid develops, at a different rate, which is true. But 90% of the time that's true. 10% of the time though, that child might actually have some deficits and maybe have a developmental disorder, which would be autism is a developmental disability that warrants further screening and actually further diagnostics.
Yeah. And how many times do you hear people say, "Oh, boys, they develop slower than girls," and that's something that we've been told for years and years and years, and so it kind of delays that early intervention that's so important.
Right.
But you know, with the research and the things that these two doctors are doing and that other institutions are doing, I think parents, families, and doctors are now reluctant to say things like, well, you know, boys, they develop more slowly.
Right.
Because of that early intervention window.
The highly correlated with, doesn't mean a child has autism, but at 18 months and even a little bit younger, they look at joint attention and eye contact. Kids with autism, you call their name, they don't look at you. Now, obviously, you check their hearing first, but if eye contact and then joint attention, what that is, if a clown walks into the room here, I'm going to look at it and then look at you and then look back and point and look back. That's initiating a joint attention bid. Most kids, we all do it, right? I mean, people will do it. Little kids will do it. They look without even any words. And look at you and then look. Kids with autism or individuals with autism might look at the clown, might even laugh, but they don't seek the other person out to share that experience. That's an early precursor for social interaction. It's the connection with another person.
Well, when we come back, we are going to find out more about what Dr. Tamir and Dr. McDonald are doing for children and families of children with autism.